Hello, dear friends, and welcome to our weekly program on Cardiac Radio, which is currently entitled Predictions in the Gospel. We are studying today, we're starting to study chapter 17 in Genesis by Alan Kardec. Last week, we studied the tail end of chapter 16, where we learned about the theory of foreknowledge. So again, Allan Kardec, as an amazing educator and scientist, he builds one chapter upon the other. So for us to understand the theory of foreknowledge helps us greatly now in this chapter of predictions in the gospel. And he starts off with a very interesting theme that maybe all of us, or at least some of us, will be able to relate to. So dear friends, please feel welcome, and we will say hello to everyone a little bit later. My name is Sunshine Beck, we're in California, and just feel hugged and loved and welcome to our study group tonight on Cardiac Radio, where of course we're nourishing our souls always 24/7, every single minute of the day. We have an opportunity to educate ourselves and to learn new angles of how to navigate our lives more successfully, thanks to the teachings of Spiritism and thanks to the spirits, both incarnated as well as discarnated, to put it all together. We're nourishing our souls. It's as important as nourishing our bodies, right, friends? So we're going to share the screen because we have a PowerPoint that may help us solidify the lessons a little bit more. And we're going here. All right, so predictions in the gospel, and we will be talking about item 1. All right, so no one is a prophet in his hometown. So this is the theme for today. No one is a prophet in his hometown. Have you felt that way at times? When you visit your family or when you're around close-knit friends who've known you ever since your childhood. Let's see what Jesus' experience was and what he's teaching us. So he starts off with a little section from Matthew 13:54-58. And he says, and having come to his hometown, he taught in the synagogue in such a way that the people were amazed, and they said, Where have this wisdom and these miracles come from? Is this not the son of the carpenter? Is not his mother called Mary, and his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas? Are not all his sisters among us? And they thus made of him an object of scandal. Can we believe this? They made an object of scandal out of Jesus. But Jesus said to them, a prophet is dishonored only in his hometown and in his own home. And he did not perform many miracles there because of their disbelief. So here we're learning a new angle. We're learning that Jesus was not respected in his own home, not even in his own hometown. So let us continue. Here Jesus enunciates a truth that became actually a proverb, which is for all time and which could be extended further by saying that no one is a prophet while still alive. Wow, we're surprised, right? Even Jesus was not recognized in his own family. They made a scandal out of him. They disbelieved him. But what did Jesus do? He stayed away. He did not waste his energy and the miracles and his talks on his family and his hometown. He went to those who had an open heart and an open mind. So no one is a prophet in his hometown has become a proverb, and it's truth. It's a part, it's a piece of truth. Have you experienced this before? So now let us look why that is. And this is what's so interesting, because now we will learn why this is the case. And of course, we're invited to reflect it back to us, because we're not only on the receiving end, we may be the giver of this situation. We may be guilty too of not respecting family members who come back or who come to visit us, and they're more evolved than we are and more knowledgeable than we are. This may even include our own children, or maybe friends or other members of our hometown. So we're also invited to do a therapeutic check-in with ourselves. In the principle of this truth is a natural consequence of human weakness and can be explained as follows. So Alan Kardec helps us right away to understand, okay, if that's the case, there's weakness behind it. All right, let's continue. The habit of being seen from infancy in the ordinary circumstances of life establishes among people a sort of material equality, which quite often makes them refuse to acknowledge the moral ascendancy of someone who has been a companion or dinner guest, someone who has been one of them and whose earlier weaknesses used to be witnessed. So here is reason number one. If we know someone from infancy, if we know someone intimately well, we are establishing a sort of material equality. A material equality. We have them framed. We put people into a cubby. And we said, okay, we're both set in the same sandbox. We both played with the same toys. We both maybe have the same mother, but maybe we just were neighbor kids. So now we're like, this is my friend, we're equal, right? But it's material. It's just seeing life and the relationship in the moment, and does not take into consideration the fact that each and every single one of us is an immortal spirit who is caught in the moment on their timeline. Everyone is at a different place of their timeline, their personal individual timeline. We blank that out, right? So then he continues and he says, pride suffers at the ascendancy that it is obliged to bear. Pride suffers at the ascendancy that it is obliged to bear. So when we see our brother or sister who grew up with us, all of a sudden being a prophet, being a very successful, very intelligent person, knowledgeable so much more than we are, our pride kicks in. No way. He's my brother or he's my sister. Because we can't really quite bear it that they are so-called better or more than we are. We start comparing. Those who raise themselves above the ordinary are always the target of jealousy and envy. So those who raise themselves above the ordinary are always the target of jealousy and envy. So if we happen, there are two sides to it. If we happen to be more knowledgeable, more accomplished, more morally developed, like Jesus was, but let's say we're not like him, but we're a little bit more than the rest of our family or friends, then we're learning here we will be always the target of jealousy and envy. Now that may be consoling information for us. So it's not just personally we directed towards us, but this seems to be a general phenomena. Now, on the other hand, are we treating people that we know very well like that? We already know that it stems from human weakness. So, all right, let's continue. Those who feel incapable of reaching the same level make an effort to bring them down by means of defamation, slander, and libel. The smaller they feel, the louder they yell, thinking they make themselves bigger and that they can eclipse such individuals by the noise they make. Wow. So then, do we bring the others down that we perceive as more and better than us? So that's a therapeutic question for us to ask ourselves. We don't have to answer it in public, but for us to assess ourselves. Am I still like that? We likely may have experienced this treatment on the receiving end. Did that feel good? No, most likely it was very painful. So would we want to treat someone like that? We know it's always easier from the overall perspective to be on the receiving end and then treat the others with kindness than being the one karmically. I mean, in the law of cause and effect, and then for our new lives, it's much worse if we are the ones who present pain and treat others like that, right? So knowing someone from infancy creates material equality, which has a tendency for us to set them up and put them into a box, and they can't be better than we are. The reason for this, the impediment for acknowledging moral ascendancy, is pride, most and foremost. Any type of human ascendancy leads to jealousy and envy. Slander, defamation, libel are common strategies to bring others down. This prejudice is also characteristic of narrow-minded and commonplace spirits who compare everything to their own personalities. So Alan Kardec helps us to categorize us if we act like that still. It's a characteristic of a narrow-minded and commonplace spirit. We tend to be egocentric, so everything evolves around us. So if you are more and better and everything, I perceive you above, so-called above me, more advanced, and I compare myself with you, it's egocentric, right? Then all of a sudden I feel less than, egocentric. But are we capable of being other-centric, being joyful at the success, the beauty, the power, the moral ascendancy of our family members, our friends, and they may be from our hometown, so to speak, but even other friends too. That is the invitation, friends, to soul search today. Moreover, it usually applies to persons who are known only for their mind, an ideal that increases with the distance of time and place. So people who are known for the brilliancy of their mind, they become even more amazing with distance of time and place. It's an idolizing, it's putting people on a pedestal. They're almost entirely divested of their humanity. It seems that they should neither speak nor feel like everyone else, that their language and thoughts must constantly be in tune with sublimity, without considering that the mind cannot stay constantly overextended and in a continuous state of overexcitement. So Alan Kardec is helping us realize that people who are known for their mind, this ideal mind, this idealization increases with distance of time and place. So the further away they are in time becomes even more pronounced. We see them almost entirely divested of their humanity. And we expect that their language and thoughts are constantly in tune with sublimity, that they're constantly sublime. But let us take note that the mind cannot stay permanently overextended. We can't always, nobody can always be sublime. Jesus maybe, but most of us are not there yet. So we need to be understanding and more tolerant, right? In the daily contact of private lives, one sees much of the corporeal individual who is no different from other ordinary persons. So if we idolize somebody far away, let's say online, we're following somebody on some YouTube or whatever it may be, we don't know them personally. We don't know them materially speaking. So we can see them as these ideal people. But what we're not considering is that the mind can't be sublime all the time, can't be overextended all the time. Everyone, so to speak, has a shadow side, right? So from the distance, we can only see the sparks of the genius who are focusing on that, because that's also what people are presenting to the public. But up close, one sees the mind at rest, and that's not always that pretty. All of a sudden, we see all the warts up close, right? I mean, it's even with the skin. If we look at the skin, it looks pretty nice right now, but if we put it under the microscope, oh heavens, we don't want to do that, right? So, so from a distance, one sees only the sparks of genius. Up close, one sees the mind at rest. And that's when we become disillusioned. So our family members, our friends from childhood, they know us up close. So they have a hard time. This is an additional reason to our own envy. They also have a hard time recognizing us or recognizing the other for their genius, because they also know that it's not continuous. And then they go into disbelief. It's not really happening. Jesus, no, he's not really performing miracles, right? He is the son of a carpenter. He is the son of Mary and all these brothers and sisters, right? After death, there is no longer any comparison, however. Only the spiritual person remains and seems to be all the greater the more distant the memory of the corporeal person is. Once we've discarnated, we again put people on a pedestal. This is why those who have marked their passage upon the earth with works of true value are more appreciated after their death than when they are alive. Same reason. Because then it's far away again, right? The ideal of a person is only known for their mind increases with distance of time and place. So when somebody discarnates, all of a sudden they seem more ideal too. A, we're less likely to compare ourselves with it, and B, they're not up close. So it's easier for us. They are judged with more impartiality, Alan Kardec says, because envies and jealousies have disappeared, and thus personal animosities no longer exist. We lost the spot. Envies and jealousies. Posterity is a disinterested judge. We say that again. This is beautiful. Posterity is a disinterested judge that evaluates the work of the mind. It accepts it without blind enthusiasm if it is good, and rejects it without disdain if it is bad, separating the individuality from what it produced. So this is so true, right? If somebody discarnated, the posterity, what they did before, now, because it's far away and we don't compare ourselves anymore, we're not feeling jealous anymore, all of a sudden we become more impartial. So we see somebody failing with more neutrality, and we see somebody being genius. Nobody's envious of Goethe. He lived so many hundred years ago. He was so brilliant, but nobody compares himself with him anymore, right? Now we can put him on the pedestal. We can read his literature. We can be so enamored with what he produced. That's the posterity is a disinterested judge. Even Jesus himself could not escape the consequences of his principle inherent to human nature, because he lived in a little enlightened environment among people completely absorbed in material life. So even Jesus could not escape this phenomena of people having a hard time seeing the genius in close up, family members, childhood friends, maybe even teachers, our own children. Can we do it with our own children? Can we truly do it with our own children? We owe this to our children, to not compare ourselves, to not tear them down if they're greater than we are. And very often they are, most likely they are. They're more advanced than we are. They're the next generation. So can we open-heartedly and open-mindedly support them in their genius? Yes, we've changed their diaper. Yes, we've seen them screaming all night long when they grew a tooth, right? But now they're adults, like Jesus, right? The governor of this planet was not recognized. So let us not be sad or discouraged if we don't get recognized, because now we know, we see the pattern behind, we see the mechanism behind it. So even Jesus could not escape this human principle. Why? Because he lived in a little enlightened environment among people completely absorbed in material life. His fellow citizens saw in him nothing but the son of a carpenter. They couldn't look past that. The brother of siblings as uneducated as they were, and they asked themselves what it was that could make him superior to them and give him the right to criticize them. Additionally, seeing that his word had less authority over his own people, who despised him, than over foreigners, he went to preach amongst those who would listen to him and those with whom he found sympathy. And here we're receiving guidance. So, on the receiving end, if we feel not recognized in our home, in our inner circle, do we keep imposing ourselves? Do we keep pushing against this door that doesn't want to open? No. Jesus just showed us what to do. What did he do? We'll read it again. Seeing that his word had less authority over his own people, who despised him, than over foreigners, who essentially didn't know him, he went to preach amongst those who would listen to him and those with whom he found sympathy. And that is the guidance for us tonight. Let us go where we are received. Let us not try to force a seed to germinate on concrete. That's a pretty impossible task. It's like pushing the river uphill. We're invited to go to the fertile soil, to those whose hearts and minds are open. Even Paul of Tarsus experienced that when he went to Greece, among the scholars, and he was a Greek citizen. He was not received. It was so painful for him. He was so disappointed. But did he force himself upon upon the scholars of Athens? No, he didn't. He retreated and went back to the folks who were open to him. Right? It's a great lesson. So now we know what to do. And hopefully on the other end, we're more conscious of, are we still doing this? Are we still jealous? Are we still comparing ourselves? Are we still incapable of recognizing the genius of those people that are close to us? Do we give them space? Do we encourage them? Are we instructive or destructive in our thoughts, words, and actions? One can get an idea of the sentiments that incited his family against him by the incident in which his own brothers and mother went to a gathering where he was present in order to take custody of him, saying that he had lost his mind. And now let us look at that. So Alan Kardec swings over to a section of the Gospel, which we find in Mark, Gospel of Mark, where his family members said that Jesus lost his mind. Can we even imagine that? So this is the same Jesus that we adore, who is our guide and model, who is the governor of this planet. We know the greatness of the Spirit, this amazing advancement that we can't even really fathom because we're so not there yet. We're just trying to get a tiny speck of Jesus's teachings partially down in this lifetime. And here his siblings, his family members, say that he lost his mind. There we see the different perspectives, right? But it doesn't have to be that way. We are invited to break through this. We don't have to perpetuate this pattern of human weakness, as Alan Kardec judges it, of ignorance, where 2021 years later, or 2020 years later, and hopefully we won't repeat this pattern. So let us go to the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 14, which is, yeah, I was correct. It's in Mark and Matthew. It's actually two Gospels. We find pretty much the same section. So, but we're turning to the Gospel according to Spiritism, and this is chapter 14, and it's entitled, Honor Your Father and Your Mother. And item 5 is entitled, Who is my mother and who are my brothers? And I'm sure we know exactly this section, right? But now, having just studied the background of this mechanism of not wanting to recognize people up close who we know very well, let us look at this passage in Mark and Matthew one more time. And arriving at the house, they found such a large crowd of people gathered there that they could not even eat their meal. When this family learned of this, when Jesus' family learned of this, they came to take charge of him because they said that he had lost his mind. Now let us pause for a moment and let us imagine the scene. So here they're arriving at the house. There's tons of people all over the place, large crowd of people gathered there. And they couldn't even eat their meal because they were surrounded by people. And just imagine we're arriving at our home where we're eating. And there's people all over the place. Let's assume inside and outside. When his family learned of this, when they realized it, they came to take charge of him because they said that he had lost his mind. Would we be like this if we come home and our son or our daughter had invited tons of people? We're likely to have a reaction too, don't we? Like, wow, what's going on here? I'm in charge, right? And so that's how they felt. So maybe hopefully we'll find some understanding. But understanding doesn't mean that we're saying, oh yeah, I'm going to continue being like that too, right? Understanding doesn't mean we will be doing the same thing. Therefore, when his mother and brothers arrived, they remained outside and asked for him to be called. Now the people were seated around him, and someone said to him, Your mother and brothers are outside calling for you. But he answered them, Who is your mother, and who are my brothers? So here's Jesus. He's surrounded by people who want to listen to him. His family's outside, and they're like, Hey, Jesus, come on now. What are you doing here? People everywhere. Family can't even eat anymore. And then and they tell him, Jesus, your family's out there. Come on. And he says, Who is my mother and who are my brothers? Wow, what an amazing question when we see it in that context. Isn't it striking? Simple, but striking. And looking at those who were seated around him, Jesus said, These are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does God's will is my brother. For whoever does God's will is my brother, my sister, and my mother. So whoever was around him fulfilled God's will from Jesus's perspective. And whoever follows Jesus, like Jesus always followed the Father's guidance, divine providence was his guiding force. And we, of course, are invited to do the same thing, to align our will with God's will, because that will be that's the straight and narrow. That is the narrow pathway. And when Jesus was surrounded by these people who were listening to him, those were the people who were following God's will, and those are his brothers and sisters and his mother. At that moment, it wasn't his family. Of course, his mother is still his mother, no question. His brother is his brother. But we're understanding he's speaking on a very different level. So now let us look at Alan Kardec's explanation around this. Some of the words used by Jesus seem strange and appear to belie his goodness and inalterable benevolence towards everyone. Makes sense, right? It's like, whoa, is he being harsh right now? Is he denying that he has a loving mother and siblings? Is he being hearted? Right? Doesn't sound like Jesus, but let us look closer. His doctrine has at its essential foundation and cornerstone the law of love and charity. And we know that too. Jesus's teachings, the core of Jesus's teachings is the law of love and charity. So let us keep that in mind. Now, what he says may not fit right away, right? That he pretty much denies his family of flesh in that moment. It is understandably a cause for wonder that in this circumstance that we just read, Jesus displays such indifference towards his family and in a certain way denies his own mother. Surprising. Regarding his brothers, it is said that they never held him in much esteem. So now Alan Kardec is giving us the background information. So his brothers never held him in much esteem. Being little advanced spirits, they did not understand his mission. Actually, let's go back one more time. They did not understand his mission. In their opinion, his behavior was bizarre, and his teachings did not touch them. John states specifically that they did not believe in him. So John in 7 verse 5 says, John states specifically, his brothers and his sisters did not believe in him. Again, that's that closeness, right? They grew up together. They knew Jesus as their brother. They were simple folk. They were not very evolved. And we don't say that with judgment at all, because most likely we're the same way still, right? But today we have the invitation to wake up and redirect ourselves if we're still stuck in this pattern. But they weren't following him. They thought he was bizarre, and had no interest in him. And they didn't believe in him. As for his mother, no one could question her tenderness towards her son. We know that Mother Mary was so wonderful. We learned so much about her in the book Good News. So, what a sweet mother. However, one must also agree that she too seemed not to have had a very precise idea about Jesus' mission. She too wasn't really in tune with his mission, as she was never known to follow his teachings or give testimony. Testing, huh? Maternal solicitude was the sentiment that predominated her. Maternal solicitude she did express. And that's what predominated in her. She was not a disciple of his teachings. She did not follow him, or she did not give testimony of it. So it's important to notice. As far as Jesus is concerned, to believe that he denied his mother would be to show ignorance of his character. Such an idea could not have animated the one who said, "Honor your father and your mother." Let us keep in mind, this section is in the chapter, "Honor your father and your mother." So at first sight, we might say like, wow, this doesn't make sense. It's crazy making, right? But now we're getting what's behind it, and it's brilliant. So he could not have truly pushed away his mother in particular, but also his siblings, because he says, honor your father and your mother. He could not have totally discredited them. Hence, it is necessary to look for another meaning for his words, which were nearly always shrouded in the veil of allegory. Jesus never wasted an opportunity to give a lesson. Therefore, he took advantage of his family's arrival to establish the difference between, and now we need to listen, what is at the root cause of what he said. He used every moment. He's the supreme educator. He's our guide and model as far as education is concerned as well. He never wasted a second. He was always teaching with every word. And here he took the arrival of his family to give a lesson, namely to establish the difference between corporeal kinship and spirit kinship. That is at the root cause. So at that moment when he said, you are all my brothers and my sisters and my mother, that's the spirit kinship. Because the spiritual kinship, all of them followed God's will, just like Jesus did. His family was the material kinship. They weren't able to. And we learned in Genesis why that was. Now let us look at the corporeal kinship and the spirit kinship a little bit more in depth. Blood ties do not necessarily establish ties among spirits. We know that, right? Blood ties does not necessarily connect us with each other through the spirit. Right? We saw that in Jesus's family also. The body proceeds from the body, but the spirit does not proceed from the spirit, because the spirit already existed before the formation of the body. We know that too, right? Spirit is immortal, has lived already for millennia, but the body is freshly, newly formed, created by the family, by the mother's body, with the help of the father's sperm, right? So that comes from the family. Comes from the body. Parents do not create the spirit of their children. They do nothing except furnish them with their corporeal envelope. But it is their duty, the parents' duty, to aid in their intellectual and moral development in order to help them progress. We're aware of that. It's a very important piece of work, if not the most important when we have children. 2, it's our duty to aid in our children's intellectual and moral development. But we're not creating the spirit as parents, we're creating the body. Spirits who incarnate in the same family, especially among close relatives, are most often sympathetic spirits connected by previous relationships that are expressed by their mutual affection during earthly life. So why do we end up in a certain family? It's because we've most likely had lifetimes of connection, rotating different relationships, and we are sympathetic. We're at a similar level, generally speaking. However, there's exceptions, of course. Emmanuel speaks to that in this chapter of the cradle and the family in thought and life in depth. So we're invited to revisit those 2 chapters in Thought and Life by Emmanuel. It's the chapter on the cradle and the chapter on the family. He explains all of this even more in depth. Nevertheless, it may also happen that such spirits are complete strangers to one another. So he's talking still about the family dynamic. So most often, the spirits who come together in families are sympathetic spirits. But there's also sometimes no connection. They are complete strangers to one another, divided by past life and antipathies. that are now expressed as animosity to serve as a trial. So in Jesus's case, maybe there wasn't that much connection. Probably not, because he was way advanced spirit and his family members were not. True family ties are not therefore blood ties. True family ties are therefore not blood ties. Let's keep that really in mind, because that will help us tremendously. So let us see here again. True family ties are not therefore blood ties, but ties of sympathy and similarity of ideas that connect spirits before, during, and after their incarnations. True family ties are not therefore blood ties. So if we get completely, if we're very materialistically inclined still, and this is not a judgment, just for us to kind of see where we are at, and we're very focused on our blood ties and nothing but on our blood ties, and our father and our mother are most important. And now they don't work out, now they're uncomfortable and painful. Let us remember that true family ties are not blood ties. This is just on the level, on the line, on the bigger picture of eternity. A lifetime is a speck. It's a second. It's the blink of an eye. Boom, and it's gone. We make it into this huge affair, right? Because we're stuck in the moment and we don't even know what the next second brings. But let us also remember, as an apprentices, as an aside, that when we learned the theory of foreknowledge, what happens in our so-called future already happened, because from on high, it's already all happened, right? It's all visible. Just we don't see it. And with our myopic vision, we also sometimes overemphasize the blood ties to our family members. And that's easy when we have a loving relationship, but it's more challenging when the relationships are challenging. Or in some cases, when our mother or father even just denied us and we needed to be adopted, right? So this is maybe consoling for us when we're in when we had experiences like that. That true family ties are not therefore blood ties, but ties of sympathy and similarity of ideas that connect spirits before, during, and after their incarnation. And of course, this sympathy does not always show up, because as we learned before, there's also very painful previous ties where we complete duties that we didn't fulfill in our previous life, or where we have past life antipathies, and they're now in animosities, right? It thus follows that two individuals born from different parents may be more like brothers through their spirits than if they were brothers through blood. So that explains why Jesus saw his brothers, his sisters, his mother, in the disciples, in those who surrounded him. And they had this common thread of following God's will, which is something that his family did not do. And we are now invited to juxtapose this situation, this story onto our own lives, particularly when we have some sore spots around our families or certain family members. It's beautiful. It's beautiful when we can open up our vision. When we see the bigger picture, things become so much easier, right? It's very touching. It's very therapeutic. There are two types of families, Alan Kardec says. There is the families through spirit ties and the families through corporeal ties. The former, which is the spirit ties, are permanent, are strengthened through purification, and are perpetuated in the spirit world through the many migrations of the soul. So the spirit kinship is permanent, and it is strengthened through purification, and it's perpetuated in the spirit world. So nice. The latter, namely the corporeal kinship, the families through corporeal ties, are fragile, like matter itself, are extinguished over time, and often dissolve morally, even in the current lifetime. So corporeal kinship or families through corporeal ties are fragile, like matter. It's just for this lifetime. They extinguish over time and they dissolve morally when one advances and the other doesn't, or vice versa. Then the connection isn't there anymore, right? This is what Jesus wanted to make understood by saying to his disciples, "Here are my mother and my brothers. That is, my family through the ties of the Spirit, because all who do the will of my Father who is in heaven are my brother, my sister, and my mother." That's the Spirit connection. And I'm sure we have that in our lives. Or we feel more disconnected with family members, maybe with one, two, or maybe with all of them, but maybe some, but feel so incredibly connected to the Spirit kinship because we're sharing this common thread, in this case, namely following God's will. And then those are our brothers, sisters, and our fathers and our mothers. His brothers' hostility is clearly expressed in Mark's narrative, which states that their purpose was to take charge of him. They wanted to take charge of Jesus under the pretext that he had lost his mind. Upon being informed of their arrival and knowing their sentiments towards him, it was natural that Jesus, speaking from a spiritual standpoint, would refer to his disciples as "these are my true brothers." Makes sense now, doesn't it? His mother was with his brothers, and thus Jesus generalizes his lesson, which in no way implies that he meant that his mother, according to the body, was nothing to him, according to the spirit, and that he felt nothing but indifference towards her. His behavior on many other occasions proved quite the contrary. So his mother was with his brothers, and that's why he generalized the lesson. But he never denied his mother as a mother of the flesh, just as a mother of the spirit. Because why? Because the brothers and the mother did not follow God's will. They thought that he was crazy. They did not follow him. They didn't believe in him. And what did Jesus do? He didn't belabor the point. He stayed the course. He expressed the truth and taught us to this day the lesson of the difference between the spirit and the corporeal kinship, now family ties. And he did not say anything, as we might have thought, discrediting towards his mother, who was filled with maternal love towards him. And we're sure he knew that and appreciated that and loved that. And we're sure he loved her. But as a material mother, as a corporeal, in a corporeal way, in a material way, not as a spirit kinship. All right, friends, let me go back. So I want to go one more back. Hold on, sorry. So he saw, just to wrap it up, Jesus saw his family through the ties of the Spirit. That's where his true family was. Okay. All right. So we're going to stop sharing because I feel disconnected. I want to say hi and see that I can. Here we are. All right. Now let us see whether we have any comments, any questions. Want to say hi to everyone. So Mark, thank you so much for joining. Flavia, thank you so much for joining, dear friend. Tony, thank you so much for joining. Nora, thank you so much for joining. John DeRosa, thank you so much for joining. And Robbie, thank you as well for joining. Thought and Life is such a wonderful book. You're so right. We can never get enough. And there is Vanessa. Thank you so much, Vanessa, for joining. It's been an incredible pleasure. We learned a lot. And next week, we will continue. We're not done yet. We're going to go back to Genesis, and we will be studying the death and passion of Jesus and the persecution of the apostles. Maybe we will continue on to the unrepentant cities and the destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem. So it's going to be exciting, and we can't wait to continue. In the meantime, please feel all hugged and loved, and God willing, we will be back next week, same time, same place. God bless you, friends. Good night.